What's shaking, you cool landlocked kids back in Kansas? I'm Captain Planet, marine scientist. I also do a lot about the environment and agriculture as far as those sciences as well. Your teacher, Mrs. Fisher, hit me up asking if I would make a video for the elementary school of Erie, Kansas, which you guys might think it's cool that even though I'm down here in Florida helping to save the Everglades as far as one ecosystem, that's what you're going to learn about today. I'm actually from Parsons. Both my mother and my brother went to Erie, so that's pretty cool. I encourage you guys to dive a little deeper into this and inspire yourself to want to learn more. My love for the Everglades, for example, never came from something that I learned in school. I think I was about sixth or seventh grade or so and started reading on this book called The Orchid Thief by Susan Orlean. And it was about this place called the Fakahatchee Strand, one of the rarest parts of the Everglades. And it was talking about, a orchid smuggling, where people would go in and steal these orchids. Hopefully my little microphone's working just fine for you guys. But people would go in and steal these orchids. And I was reading about how, you know, strong men, from way back in the day would go into these swamps and I think my coyote just fell. He's moving on me. But they would go into these swamps and survive attacks from indigenous tribes to surviving panthers and alligators and dysentery and starvation, only to make it out of that swamp, to get smacked in the head over their bag of orchids by a different orchid thief. And how this was the most dangerous place you could ever roam for orchids. Well, I think it was that danger word that really, really, truly attracted me. You know, Growing up in Kansas, being into the outdoors, it's like, what's the worst that can happen to you camping? Get bit by a rabid raccoon? Where when I'm out in the Everglades, and even before I ever saw it, just reading about it, it just seemed so exciting, and I wanted to go there and experience this kind of danger where, you know, some, poisonous snakes and poisonous plants and alligators, and panthers. I was just in the Fakahatchee Strand, and I go there probably once a week, but I was just in the Fakahatchee Strand probably 2 months ago, and I was making a video about epiphytes, which is the orchids are in the epiphyte family. It means a plant that lives in trees. I was making a video about epiphytes, about orchids and bromeliads, and I just got done making a video, and I sat down, at this big old huge cypress tree, big around than this chair, and I'm sitting there and just enjoying the swamp, looking at the water, and I hear this loud walk coming towards me. Just this boom, 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 like walking with a purpose, and like, a human probably wouldn't be coming from this direction because, it wasn't the trail, and not a whole lot of people walk off the trails like me out there. And then I saw it, it was a Florida panther, and this panther walking right up, and I'm thinking in my head, how could she not hear me? Like, how does she not know I'm here? And right when I thought that, just boom, she looked up, just right in my eyes, like it was just sucking the soul right out of my body. There was no fence between us, just 20 yards of air and a small body of water, a foot deep, if that. And I never once felt threatened. And I'm pretty sure she didn't feel threatened either. It was almost kind of a thank you, for some of the stuff that I do. And some of the stuff that I do is I try to help educate people about these different ecosystems. You know, the Everglades isn't a swamp at all. It's a slow moving river system. It's also known as the river of grass. And this slow moving river system for the last 5,000 years, the way it's worked is there's a huge lake here in Florida, guys, and it's called Lake Okeechobee. And it's huge. I've stood at this lake and it looks like the ocean. You can't see across it. It's so big. And this huge lake here in South Florida, we don't really have winters like you guys have. We have what's the dry season and the wet season down here. And so in the summertime is the wet season where it'll rain almost every day sometimes. And the way that this ecology has always worked is the water that collects in that Lake Okeechobee naturally flows south through those Everglades, that river of grass. Now, this filtration system also trickled fresh water down into the Florida Bay all along what's called the Atlantic Barrier Reef, one of my favorite other places in the world. It's the third largest coral reef system on the entire planet. So the Everglades help filter that. Well, it doesn't work that way anymore, because here in Florida, what happened is the government came along and gave jobs, for different people to say, hey, we need to make this land where we can sell it, because nobody's going to ever live south of Lake Okeechobee if it's underwater half of the year, right? So the Army Corps of Engineers came in and they made up all these canal systems to fool the lake, so they thought. They thought that they were fooling, nature and trying to fix it in their own way. So instead of letting that water flow south, they made these canals to where the water flows west through what's called the Caloosahatchee River into the Gulf of Mexico, and the water flows east through the St. Lucie River to what's called the Atlantic Ocean, on the east side of Florida. So they've redirected that flow. And since then, the Everglades have starved of water. Our nutrient pollution is just really, really bad. A couple years ago, I watched all my homies washing up on the beach. I mean, all the homies. From grouper fish to dolphins to even whale sharks. Because the algae was so bad. Because we tried to fool nature. We tried to fool nature. And now, since that water isn't getting filtered and it goes straight from that lake to the ocean, it doesn't have time to get itself clean. And when it's not clean and it's full of nutrients, that means that algae can grow. Because, see, plants drink water like we do, right? But they don't eat hot dogs like we do. Plants do take vitamins, though. And we call these Flintstone vitamins fertilizer, right? Well, the problem is we don't treat them the same. Mom and dad don't give you 50 Flintstone vitamins a day. Why? Because then that good thing would become a bad thing. And your liver would shut down. You'd get sick because you have too much nutrients in you, right? Well, that's the same way that the plants are working. We don't recognize that plants are nearly the same way, and instead of giving them one Flintstone vitamin a day, fertilizer, we want to give them, a 2-month supply in one day. Like they're going to be able to eat all that, nutrients in one day without them hurting and dying. So all that extra vitamin, those nutrients, they go into the water. It's what you call leaching. So when all these nutrients end up in the water, it creates high amounts of nitrogen and high amounts of phosphorus in the water, And when there's not adequate plants to take that out, like what would be in the Everglades as a filtration system, when there's not adequate plants to filter it out, another kind of plant comes in to help filter it out, and that's called algae. Sometimes that's in the form of cyanobacterias, like our blue-green algae. Cyanobacteria isn't an algae at all; it's actually a bacteria. But then you have things like dinoflagellate algae, some known as K. brevis. That's what we call red tide here in Florida, where it makes the ocean sick. And even though red tide and all these things have happened for hundreds and hundreds of years, and we find that that's a natural species, it's not like we invented it, but our inventions get in the way and make it even more prevalent. So, an example, a plant is natural, right? But if you put Miracle Grow on a plant, it grows like a miracle, almost unnaturally. And that's kind of our problem. So we need to take a stand for the Everglades, and we need to manage it right. We're doing something called the Everglades Restoration Project down here in Florida, but as a scientist, I stand more with the natives, the Indians down here, than I do with other scientists, because, the Miccosukee nations and the Seminole nations down here, these people have lived with the Everglades more than any scientist who's learned about it on the internet, and one of their leaders, a really great woman named Betty Osceola, and I sent your teacher some videos of me and her to help you learn. But she told me one time that, how the scientists treat the Everglades like a computer model, and treat nature like it's a computer algorithm, but how nature's a woman, and you never know what a woman's going to do. Now that's coming from her, not me. But I really found that to be interesting. And some of the things that I've learned from her and her people, I find that more valuable ecologically than I do the papers that I've read from PhD scientists and stuff like that. Just because I respect that heritage of knowing, So I think it's really, really important that you guys not only take a look about the Everglades as far as science goes, but also ask your teacher about seeing some of those YouTube videos of mine with Betty Osceola of the Miccosukee tribe. Because I think it's really, really cool to get, another side of the story. Instead of just facts, you hear a history. And I think that's really cool. There's one video where she's, talking to me about how you can take this plant called Bladderwort and squeeze it out and then put it back in the water and let it fill back up full of water, and it'll fill up with filtered water so you can sit there and drink it. That's like nature's life straw right there. I mean, that's cool. Who doesn't want to learn about stuff like that, right? So I tell you what, it's already at 13 and a half minutes right now. I don't even know if I can send it this long. But I hope this inspires you to learn more about the Everglades, because you just can't really learn about the Everglades in 13 minutes. But you can get inspired to the point where you'll want to spend hours learning about it. So don't tell yourself you're bored at home. Be like I was in 6th or 7th grade and reading about the Fakahatchee Strand and telling yourself, this is where I'm going to go when I can go there and visit it. I didn't know that I was going to love it so much that I'd never leave. But hey, everything works out for a reason, right, kids? Keep shooting for the stars. Keep chasing your dreams. Keep reading, kids. I don't care who it is. If they're saying education isn't cool, that just ain't true. Education is not the memorizing of facts, but the ability of training the mind to think. Albert Einstein said that. And you're never going to get anywhere in life if you don't want to keep learning. I'm 36, and I keep learning stuff every single day just because I love it. So keep it up, guys. Love you, Kansas kids. Peace out.